Hey Rocky fans, Leandra here. Kelly and I wanted to put a content warning on this episode because this minute of the film depicts scenes that, to a modern eye, contain sexual assault. While these scenes were originally not written with that intent, we are aware that for some listeners, this discussion may need to be skipped. If you would like to pick up the conversation after we're done with these minutes, check back in at minute 56. Rocky Horror Minute is rated R. The Rocky Horror Picture Show is also rated R. We're going to spend this time discussing the movie in gory detail, and along the road we will talk about some adult content and use some of our favorite swear words.
Happy minute 50, we're halfway through, bitches!
Consider yourselves warned. Welcome to Rocky Horror Minute, the podcast where we break down the Rocky Horror Picture Show in excruciating detail, 1 minute at a time. I'm one of your hosts, Leandra.
And I'm your other host, Kelly.
And we are finally at the midway point of the movie. We are at minute 50, and it's only taken us 8 years.
Life is not it's the journey, not the destination. It's not a race.
Life is a highway? I don't know.
But yes, I'm very happy that we've made it this far. If we did 50 minutes, we can do 50 more minutes, I hope.
I think so. And I told Kelly that if we actually finish this project, which is definitely going to happen, we're going to get matching tattoos. And I think that's the first time that I've spoken that into existence on the podcast. So if you haven't heard from us in a while, please bug us. We intend to not be on another hiatus again.
That's the hope. And we do appreciate when you guys reach out to us, even when we are dealing with life and not able to record or whatever. Also send us your matching tattoo ideas. I am pushing for a large full body nude of me on both of us. And I'm hoping that's what we go
Frankly,
with.
I don't have big enough tits to accommodate your tits.
Well, no, I was thinking like it could be like spread out across the back. I don't know. I'm willing to accommodate different options, but I think that it should be a nude portrait of me in some way.
And here I was thinking we could just do the logo for this very podcast.
Yeah. Well, we could also change the logo to that if you wanted.
Oh.
Yeah.
I guess that was always an option.
It was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, before we begin our look into minute 50, I just want to say it's a real shame that Perry Bedden killed all of the Transylvanians off after the lab scene. I mean, I assume that's what happened, seeing as we're never going to see them again.
Aren't a couple of them in the flashback crowd? Or not flashback, but the hallucination
Well, also
crowd?
the flashback.
Yes. But I seem to remember there being a couple of the actors there at least. But yeah, I assume it was Perry Bedden. He's a menace, still at large, by the way, after all these years. And he actually, unfortunately, took someone very near and dear to us recently.
Molly Balin from Snickers and Sass spent so much time with us recording so many minutes. And Perry Bedden got to the tape before us and just destroyed it. I assume also along with Molly herself, because we have yet to hear from her since.
Yeah, I assume he pulled the tape out of the cassette because that's how it was obviously recorded and strangled her with it, or perhaps since it's highly flammable, used that in some way.
Well, whatever it was, Molly, we are so sorry that we have to re-record without you. You have no idea. If you happen to still be alive somewhere, please let us know. I'm sure that our listeners would like to know as well.
Yes.
Anyway, tell me what happens in minute 50.
Okay, so we have Riff and Magenta looking at the monitor, watching Janet. Janet looks up into the camera. She seems to see it, and then she quickly puts on her robe to cover up because she's in her underwear. Then we cut to Riff and Magenta again, just watching. And then we see Brad pushed into what is supposedly a different room. It's very clearly the same room with no filter over it. So Janet's room was filtered with like a reddish pink. This is filterless. You see Columbia push him in there and then toss him a blue robe with some embroidery on it. Then we're back to Janet in her pink room. We see her walk over to the bed. She takes her robe off, standing by the bed, and then she seems to remember that she's being watched and kind of panic, and she really quickly sits down on the bed behind the gauzy, transparent canopy, because apparently that's all she requires. And then she goes back to not caring, as far as I can tell, that people are watching her. We go back to Riff and Magenta. Magenta goes, ha, ha, ha. And then there's... Well,
wait, what does she say?
It's actually very similar to, if anybody remembers the Moonbase Alpha days when people would type out ha 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 and it would read it as ha ha ha. But anyway, it's like that but slower. We get a TV static style wipe. We hear, I guess, a dog. It sounds more like a stock wolf sound effect, but I'm assuming it's supposed to be one of Frank's dogs. I don't know.
I think it's a coyote.
I suppose it could be that too. I suppose it could be a human being. I don't know. But we hear something howl, and it's a very cartoony stock sound effect. And we see the canopy bed with the red lighting now. And it's from the side so that Janet is in profile. There's somebody coming into the room, and she sits up and says, "Who is it? Who's there?" We hear Brad's voice say, "It's only me, Janet." Janet says, "Oh, Brad, darling, come in." He does, and then immediately mounts her, and she's very surprised. She says, "Yes, my darling. Oh, but what if..." He says, "It's all right, Janet. Everything's going to be all right." She says, "Oh, I hope so, my darling." But then she pulls off, I guess, his wig to reveal Frankenfurter's curly mop of hair, and then screams, "Oh, it's you!" Frank, now in regular Frank voice, says, "I'm afraid so, Janet. But isn't it nice?" Continues to kind of be all over her, and then she hits him and is sitting up and says, "Oh, you beast, you monster, what have you done with..." And then it's a cliffhanger. It cuts off right there.
Wow, I wonder who she's worried about.
I know.
Or maybe it's like, what have you done with my clothes?
That's true. Really, what did happen to those? Do we think Columbia's like... Well, she doesn't do laundry. Are they still on the floor of the time warp room? What would we call
of
that
the ballroom?
The ballroom, yeah. Are they still on the floor in there, or is somebody washing them, or were they hung up to dry?
I'm just gonna go out on a limb and assume that they are right where they were left.
That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no reason for me to think that they would be moved.
That's fair. So, what do we think of this minute?
There is a lot going on in it, and honestly, I feel like the past several minutes of just being in the lab scene has really made us kind of hungry for these details, and now there's just so much going on all the time, and I'm just very happy to get into actual stuff happening.
Yeah, it is nice to just have a change of scenery after what seemed like interminable. And granted, we made it seem longer by taking literal years to get through lab scene, but it really, really drags. So yeah, it's nice to be somewhere new, seeing new things.
Yeah. I think some of the things that I like most about not being in the lab is you also get a different kind of color texture. So there's a huge difference in the coloration, particularly of Brad's quote unquote room, between the 35 millimeter and the Blu-ray. There's really no wash in the Blu-ray version, but in the theatrical version, the one that you'd see on film, that room really does look very blue.
Oh, interesting. Because that was actually one of the things I had in my notes is we do, so in the version that I'm watching, which is the Blu-ray version, Brad literally in this little bit that we got him in today has no filter on it at all. It just looks like the room. Now, when he's behind the sheet, not to spoil anything in future minutes, when he's behind the sheet, it does look a little bluer, but in this little scene where he gets the rope thrown to him, it, as far as I can tell, is just the actual color. So did they, like, color correct it after the...
They did, and I don't know why.
That is very weird to do. I wrote in my notes that I thought it was strange and inconsistent of them to have Janet be filtered when she enters the room and not Brad, and then later filter Brad in a different color.
Yeah. I can't even blame Sue Mary for that one.
No.
I don't really rightfully understand what caused this to happen.
It's basically, so this is what you're telling me, this is like the Star Wars Special Edition, but for Rocky Horror.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully we don't get a future Special Edition where Richard O'Brien added in new aliens, or Tim Curry's mom alien from Revenge of the Old Queen walking in front of
dicks.
the camera.
Dicks.
I mean, that would be good. Or like little random farting creatures and stuff. Not a fan of the Star Wars Special Editions here.
Well, we at Star Wars Minute will definitely talk about that more.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I really want to express, and I don't know that we've expressed this enough on this podcast, is in that brief moment that you see Brad Majors, you see that Barry Bostwick has a gigantic cock.
Oh, we have discussed this.
Yes, but I want to just take more time to say that it's really, even from profile, even in the shadows, it's just like, it's very impressive. And I would like to think that people are sleeping on how I guess hung Barry Bostwick is.
Listen, we longtime listeners may or may not remember, we asked Larry Vizell when he came on our show, who's a good friend of Barry's, we asked if that was stuffed because it really looks like it is, and he said Barry claims it was not. So I believe him, obviously. Plus, if you've ever had the chance to meet Barry Bostwick, you will know he has such big dick energy.
But he's also really nice about it.
Well, that is big dick energy. People who are assholes, well, I guess that's not true because, like, line cook dick is a thing. He has the bearing and confidence of somebody who knows that he is packing.
Larry, if you're listening to this, feel free to either tell Barry about this or not, whichever you think would be the better choice. I know you're a listener. I don't think Barry Bostwick is at least an avid listener, but just wanted to segue into not talking about Barry Bostwick's dick. I can appreciate that Magenta is looking particularly white-faced while looking into the television monitor. Or I guess not television monitor, just the monitor on the transducer board. I understand that there are a lot of people who think that Magenta wears whiteface or clown white or what have you. I really just can't express enough how not good that looks, at least on a stage that is in a movie theater. Mm-hmm. You might look amazing in it. You really might. I certainly don't.
No.
I look buffoonish.
Nobody does, really. And also, I find that people who are not accustomed to wearing that type of makeup have a really hard time applying it evenly, so it also will look smudgy and patchy. I am somebody who believes that at times Magenta may have been wearing a little bit of, maybe not clown white, but a little bit of like actual white makeup as opposed to pale foundation. I do not find her makeup to be consistent in the movie, but I think in some scenes there's an argument to be made that she's wearing it, but it is never the right choice to wear it, especially since unless you are that pale already, very, very pale, like the palest shade of foundation will give that effect for you, especially under stage lights. I recently was helping my two mothers dress as Riff and Magenta, and I put my everyday foundation on them because they're both a lovely golden brown. One of them is maybe even swarthy. But anyway, I put my normal everyday foundation on them, and it looked like they were wearing clown white. It was insane how white it was on them. Am I exaggerating at all, Leandra?
No, they still looked amazing. I know that they don't listen to the podcast from what I can tell.
Let's fucking hope
but
not.
but on the off chance that they do, I don't want to be in trouble like you would be in trouble. So I will say that your mom's looked wonderful.
Oh no, it's not that they didn't look good. I mean, they knew it looked ridiculously white on them. We were all laughing about it, but we were trying to get that effect. I mean, that's basically what I'm trying to say. Because my mom was skeptical. She was like, "You're not gonna bring clown makeup." I was like, "Mom, trust me, this will read that way on you," and I was right.
Yeah. Your mom really wanted clown makeup.
She really did, but she trusted me, and she was glad of that instinct. This is also, I will say, Leandra again can back me up here. That foundation looks normal on me. I got matched for it, in Sephora, and it looks normal on me, at least for like my non-summer, less tanned shade. However,
are you talking about that one picture?
Yeah, so in photographs, it does not look the same. And the way that I found this out is that I was wearing that foundation in New York City when I went to, I met my mom's there. Me and my boyfriend and my mom's met some of their friends for dinner, and then we all went to a Broadway show. And a photo was taken of us at the restaurant, I believe with flash. And later that night, me and my moms are at the hotel bar having a drink and relaxing, and my mom said, "Oh, my friend Tish sent me that photo that was taken at the restaurant, aw." And I look over her shoulder and I go, "Oh, what the hell?" And then my mom just started cackling and like choked out something about a kabuki dancer, because it literally looked like that. I look like a corpse next to everyone else, and I was like, "Is that what I looked like tonight? Is that what I look like right now?" And they were like, "I swear you don't look like that in real life." But the photo is shocking. I mean, there's a gray cast to my face.
It really is just the silliest thing, because I've seen you with that color foundation, or that specific foundation, on in real life. And when you sent me that picture, I was like, I don't understand why you would do this to yourself.
It is insane. Like, it's a medium coverage foundation. It's Huda Beauty, if anybody is familiar with this particular foundation, and it's great. And I think it looks very normal on me, but in photographs, and also I'm assuming under stage lights, it does give that ghastly effect even on my very fair skin. So all this to say, you don't need clown white. Don't do it. Just say no.
Friends don't let friends.
Correct.
But another thing that I do like about Magenta's makeup in this, and something that you absolutely can recreate, are the super spidery lashes. You see them in profile, I think, for the first time in a close-up in this bit of the movie when she's looking at the monitor, and you really just see how incredibly spiky and full they are, and not just the uppers but also the lowers. I really feel strongly that Magentas look even better when they have their fake eyelashes on. It's just, for me, it's an integral part of the makeup.
Absolutely. The lashes, I really, really encourage all Magentas to wear top and bottom lashes.
Although I've had to explain to several people, so I'm assuming that this isn't kind of common knowledge. You can use upper lashes as lowers, but you do have to flip them upside down so that they're facing the correct way, like they follow the natural curve of your eyelashes that you're covering. I've seen more than one picture of people who use uppers as lowers, but then keep them pointed like they're still eyelashes for up, and I just don't understand. So if that's something that you're kind of struggling with, I totally get it. Just don't be afraid to flip them upside down though, and I think that you're going to find that it's much more successful for you.
Yeah, I remember when you gave me that piece of advice, which, first of all, I had worn upper lashes as bottom lashes many times at that point in my life when I joined cast. But I remember you giving me that piece of advice and me being like, yeah, I'm I'm capable of common sense, so I did figure that out. But apparently it's not as obvious to everybody, which doesn't make you dumb, just special.
I I would say that not having to be told that makes you very, 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 very smart,
Yeah.
and everybody else is not quite as on top of things as you.
I'm kind of considered a savant when it comes to makeup.
Sure, we can go with
Yeah.
that.
I thought you
Yeah,
would agree with that.
that is what you are getting from my words.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
And I'm not bothering to analyze the tone.
No, no, you probably shouldn't.
Okay, good, I won't.
I really love when I see a Rocky cast who lets Riff and Magenta look into the monitor for this bit, either by looking through it at the transducer board, or I've even seen some casts have like a frame that looks like a monitor, and they just kind of hold that up and look at it into the audience, which I think is fun.
You know, speaking of that exact frame, I have an interesting tidbit about that from the commentary.
Ooh.
Richard O'Brien mentioned that, well, at the time of recording, I don't know if he still does, but he mentioned that he still has what he called the thing around the television screen. He later clarified that he meant like the frame and the lever. And Patricia Quinn was shocked at this news, and he said, yeah, I have it in my wee shed. He said his children were really interested in it. Linus wanted it. I don't know how old Linus was when the commentary was recorded. I should look that up, but I didn't, so uh, I don't know if he was a child, but he referred to them as children. He made it sound like his kids played with it a lot. He said it's lost a couple of rivets, but yeah, he hung on to that.
I bet I could ask Linus O'Brien if he remembers that.
Aw.
He's on Facebook, and I I'm like not I'm obviously not friends with him, but I am Facebook friends with him. I wonder if I could ask him and not be weird about it. What do we think, listeners? Could I not be weird for a second?
I think that it will hopefully be a treasured childhood memory, or maybe he'll be like, I was fully an adult, but I just loved to pretend like I was like a talk show host.
Aw.
Patricia Quinn on this scene said that she took a real issue with it, I guess. She said, I never really liked the way you took so much pleasure in looking at that. Voyeuristic sense. Making those noises and things, I got rather embarrassed. So I did not notice any noises Richard O'Brien was making. They may have not included them. So I don't know if while they were filming this he was going like
Oh
or what.
God. Oh God.
He was
Do I cut that?
you decide. But whatever he was doing really made Patricia Quinn uncomfortable, which I was surprised by. But she did not like the voyeurism angle. She has yet to comment on the commentary. She has yet to comment on how she feels about the incest, but the voyeurism bothered her.
Now, I know that later on she was like incest in my movie and acted like this was not a thing that had come to mind. I think that that was a joke.
Oh, okay. I was like, unless she does not remember the movie. I don't see how she could have not picked up on it.
It was like a standing thing that she'd be like, it wasn't incest. It wasn't anything untoward.
Okay.
We were just siblings.
That has to be a joke, especially not to jump ahead to hopefully future podcasts we do, but they take it even a step further in Shock Treatment. And even though that's not the same characters, it is the same actors, and they are once again playing brother and sister. And I don't think there's any
Yeah.
room for doubt in Shock Treatment, is what I'll say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on to going back into the bedroom. I wanted to talk a little bit about the water basin. Like I said, we haven't been in a new room in like 8 years, so I'm just very excited. So the water basin has some really nice details. It looks like it might be made of like, I don't know, enamel, like something like that. And there are pink panels on the inside with a red floral design. And I looked at this. I think that the lip of the basin is either broken or maybe partially broken, but there's supposed to be a bit that's open at one side, kind of like for a spout. So I I have never stayed in a place where I would need to have just a water basin hanging out. So I don't know which would be more likely, but it looks like a fun little antique that perhaps Peter Henwood would later sell in his antique shop.
Yes, it is an absolutely beautiful and also so what is it for? Is it for like washing up? Was that typical at the time to have in a bedroom like a basin that was filled at all times with water?
It's not something that struck me as terribly odd to see.
I mean,
So,
when you think about it though, isn't it? Like would you not be confused if you went into a bedroom and there was a basin of standing water? I mean, like, honestly, I always associated it with holy water, which it is not, obviously. They're not in a church, but that's the only time I've ever seen a basin like that filled at all times with water in an interior room.
I'm I'm now quickly Googling to see if
Fair.
somebody on the internet can explain water basin for bedroom.
And I don't
Why?
know. I mean, that may have been a common thing in the 70s, or maybe it was like a common thing earlier, and this is making it look more old fashioned. I'm not sure. I'm just not aware of it, so I was just curious.
Oh, typically in the Victorian era homes, there was only one bathroom on the bedroom level, accessed from the highway. Not from the highway, accessed from the hallway. Accessed from the hallway, Kelly, not hallway. Shit. I'm not even high.
Is something
I,
wrong with you?
I I've got Jagoff disease. Accessed from the hallway, so the convenience of being able to privately wash one's face before getting into bed without going out into the hall must have played a part in the design. And that makes a lot of sense, particularly if you figure that they don't want to have Brad and Janet wandering around at night.
Yes, it definitely makes sense for a Victorian era home. Would I keep it filled at all times in the 1970s when it was more convenient to go use running water? No, I would not. However, I understand what they were going for then as like an old-timey thing.
Yeah, and the castle does not seem to have necessarily all of the amenities of a 1970s home.
You don't think it has running water?
It might have running water.
It has a
I mean,
pool.
they do have a pool. I just I don't know that there would be a restroom near all of the bedrooms.
No, that's fair. It's less about there being like a sink or similar thing in the bedroom, and it's more about stagnant water that would be not ideal for me. If there was like a sink in the bedroom, fair enough. Or like, I don't know, water
You know
that's
who
not
would love
exposed
this
to the
though?
air. Who?
Pets, cats and dogs.
Yeah. That is true. Pets would like it. I thought it was interesting. That totally makes sense that it would be a Victorian thing. Would you, if you're in this house, would you use that water?
No.
No.
God, no.
No, no, no.
Not
That's
even a
how you get
chance.
bacterial infections or a canthamoeba in your eye or something like that.
You end up with, like, what, Giardia?
Surely we don't know anybody who's contracted Giardia.
Cough, cough, Oscar, cough, cough.
Um, he claims he got it from an exploding sandwich, so we'll go with that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Sure.
It's also in this scene that you see that Brad's socks are like a super dingy yellow. They're not white like the undies.
Yes.
And that he's also still wearing his shoes, which I guess might make sense. But I feel like during the lab scene, his socks weren't like this disgusting, like beige almost. And for the rest of the movie, he's just wearing like the most grody looking socks imaginable.
Have we addressed how Brad got his other shoe back?
I assume that Columbia like went back and got it because she's a little stinker, but she's not gonna like make him hobble around
That
with
makes
one
sense.
shoe on.
Because yeah,
Like
as
Magenta wouldn't.
as people may remember, Brad, after getting undressed and when he's getting shoved into the elevator, he picks up one shoe and carries it, but the other shoe is left behind, and I guess I guess somebody brings it back to him at some point. Sue's definitely to marry for that one.
Absolutely. Although I do think that it is better to have a magically appearing shoe than have Brad dedicate to the commitment of that bit and just forever be wearing one shoe.
Yeah, I mean, what would have maybe made sense is for him to grab two shoes.
Well, yes, that would have been ideal, but did he know?
No, he did not.
But yeah, his socks are disgusting, and I think that that's a real shame that they couldn't find white socks.
I wanted to talk about the fact that Janet can see the camera, because I think it's pretty clear that she does see and notice it.
Yes, absolutely.
First of all, what do we think like it looked like? Was it concealed at all, or do you think it was just like a big camera sitting there?
It's an obvious nanny cam.
Yeah, like it's in a teddy bear, but like still huge in the middle of its belly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very normal.
So there's that that I'd be interested in discussing, but also just her reaction to it is strange. Like she's I mean, and I guess this is just more of the ongoing corruption of Janet, because she kind of acts modestly, she covers up, but then she stops giving a shit and takes off her robe, and then she's like, oh no, but then as we see, she has no problem basically like fucking Brad on camera. I mean, it's like we're watching a episode of Love Island in here.
I hear what you're saying. I don't know what was going through her mind. It might be I wonder if this thing is on. Is there should I really worry about it? Is there any sort of reason that I should be concerned about just sleeping? And then maybe since she's woken up in the middle of the night, she just has forgotten about it.
That's fair. I guess I kind of interpret it as her more examples of her knowing how she should be acting and feeling, and it not actually being like, she doesn't really seem to have those convictions, so she's being gradually pulled away from them.
So you think that there's a little bit of like excitement at the prospect of maybe being watched?
Maybe, or not caring. Like, you know
That's
what I
fair.
mean? Or not caring that much, to be covered up and stuff. We see that from Janet throughout, of her kind of pretending to be prim and proper, but then accidentally slipping up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that actually segues into another point I wanted to discuss, which is, do you think Janet was a virgin at the beginning of this scene?
At the beginning of the scene, I think yes.
I agree.
I don't think that she's lying when in future minutes she says I'd only ever kissed before.
I agree with that. I like to joke about it being the opposite, of course. When I play Janet, I love to give a big, exaggerated wink to the audience after I say that line. But really, like, realistically, I think the character is a virgin. I think that Brad has not tried anything, and I think if he had, she probably would have gone with it.
Yeah.
I
I
think
think
she's
that
mostly,
she's definitely.
yeah.
You go.
I was just gonna say, I think she's mostly a virgin because Brad has not made a move.
I think that that is very fair to say. And to Brad's credit, I think that he's trying to be incredibly polite and respectful.
Yes, and Brad's definitely the one who is more sincerely modest and sincerely tied up in this like morality. We don't see him faltering nearly as much until he kind of completely loses it.
And I think that brings us to a pivotal point in the movie where Janet thinks that Brad is coming in to comfort her in this very kind of confusing time, and then starts making a move. And at first she's surprised, but then she goes, actually, yeah, no, this is actually a fantastic time to do this.
Yeah.
And we get into a very controversial part of the movie, something that a lot of people say hasn't aged very well. And that's this, I'd call it a bed trick. And for those of you who maybe don't know what that is, it was fairly commonly used in Elizabethan plays. A lot of Shakespearean plays have them. I believe that it originated in Commedia, and it is the concept of getting somebody into bed under false pretenses, thinking that they're going to be in bed with one person, but instead they're in bed with somebody different. And this, for many years, since the 1600s at least, was considered very funny. And obviously now we know that that is absolutely not a way to have consensual sex.
Yes. And I will say, like, at least in this case, the bed trick is revealed before any sex happens. Although that may not have been Frank's intent, but usually, I mean, if usually they go all the way through it, and then it's like days later, they're like, oh my god, that was actually the Duke or whatever. So.
So I think that obviously we had a bit of a content warning at the top of this minute, and we're going to have it in subsequent minutes too. But just to kind of address this now, so we don't necessarily have to keep addressing it, I I'm fundamentally aware that this scene kind of in and of itself can be very, very problematic and even possibly a little bit elevate or not elevating. I don't want to say triggering because that's not quite the word.
I mean, it can be triggering for people who have had something like this happen to them, certainly.
I mean, I guess that's fair.
Yeah.
But even if it hasn't, this can be an incredibly uncomfortable scene to watch through the lens of a modern audience. I
Yeah.
think that it's things like this that make Rocky such an interesting thing to discuss because yes, it's a cult classic. Yes, there are things about it that really paved the way for better expression and even better representation of LGBTQIA two spirit, and and because of that, when there's such a kind of moral failing like one of these scenes, it really does stand out.
Yeah, and to be clear, we are both very much of the opinion, well, not opinion. This is sexual assault for sure. It is unfortunate that it is played for laughs. I do not think anyone involved in the movie was thinking of it in terms of sexual assault. I think it was more like a classic bed trick. I also think if you asked our problematic fave Richard O'Brien, maybe not fave, but I think if you asked him, he would say it's not. He honestly, he would probably say something along the lines of like, well, it's not sexual assault because she really wanted it. That does not matter. Obviously, none of that matters. It still is, but I don't think that was how the scene was intended to be taken, which doesn't matter when it comes to the impact, but I just thought that should be said, that I don't think anybody meant to make this scene a rape scene, basically.
Right. And I think that there can be a positive spin to this, similarly to what hypothetical Richard O'Brien might have said, with it being that Janet and then later Brad actually did want this. I think that if you look at the movie as a whole, you can see that both Brad and Janet are on this journey of self-exploration, and this is a step along it, and it gets them to a point where they do see that there's a lot more to their sexuality than what they initially thought. And I think that is something that can be celebrated.
Yeah, and I'm thankful that we do at least eventually see them consent to having sex with Frank, understanding everything that means. Well, while it is not, again, I would not consider this an acceptable consent because it comes after a fair amount of persuasion and deception. At least nobody actually has sex under false pretenses, at least. Right.
So, all of that being said, I'm sure that some of you might be thinking, well, shit, if you think that everybody in this is like assaulting each other, how can you like this movie?
Well, so I would not say like it's similar to how I enjoy a lot of Shakespearean plays when they involve a bed trick. I guess I'm taking it in the context of the movie or the play in that case rather than what it would be in real life, if that makes sense. I know that in the movie nobody is being assaulted. That is not how anyone intended it to be taken. That's not how it's supposed to be taken. So I'm able to, I guess it's sort of a form of suspension of disbelief. In real life, this would never, ever, 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 ever be okay. But knowing that it's not real life, I'm able to understand, I'm able to say that was bad. They should not have played the scene that way, but I can get past it, basically.
And I think that there's a fun argument to be had that Janet from the get-go knows that it's Frank, and I can appreciate that in so much as, Kelly, if you walk into my bedroom and you go, "Hi, I'm your boyfriend," and you're wearing a wig, and obviously, yes, you may sound like him, but you go, "Yeah, definitely me. Let's have sex."
That's an
Like we
interesting
do.
interpretation. I actually was going to ask you if you think, well, okay, first of all, this is a genuine question that's going to make me sound very stupid. At the beginning of the scene, that's Barry Bostwick speaking, right? Not Frank doing a very good impression of him.
Correct. It
Okay,
is
Tim
Barry
Curry.
Bostwick
Okay.
speaking.
I wanted to make sure. I was like, Tim Curry has amazing range, but that would be a really, really good impression, to say nothing of. Well, I don't know. When we get to the Janet scene, I guess that must also be Susan Sarandon speaking, but that sounds a lot less like her than this sounds like Barry. However, so Frank is able to do a perfect impression of Brad. Is
Because
that
he's an alien.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, is that an alien trait, or is Frank just really good at it, or yeah, you think that it's like a
I
shape shifting thing?
I think it's an alien thing.
Okay, that's
I
all.
can't
I was
imagine there
just
being any other reason.
Yeah, I mean, I was just like, maybe Frank's just supposed to be really good at that, but
No, no, Brad's in on it and is also really good at ventriloquism.
I like that idea too. But
Yeah.
yeah, that I mean, well, we have seen a little bit of magic from Brad with the self buttoning shirt and everything, so that makes
Yeah,
sense.
and he has a second shoe.
Yeah, which we can wonder where the third shoe was being stored.
Ooh.
Yeah, but anyway, that's all. I was just curious about what your take was. I also like to think that it's an alien thing, but you're right. I mean, it's not that dark in there, and
She doesn't wear glasses.
yeah, and he was not, I guess, in Brad form. He was wearing an actual wig that gets removed, and
And
not even a
once he
wig cap
reveals
under it, by the way.
once he reveals the wig, it's just this poof of hair.
Yeah.
Like there's no chance that the hair is like not sticking out at
I
all
know, I
corners
know.
and whatnot. Like I would like to think that Janet is like, "Oh no, Brad, what are you doing here?"
Yeah, which is funny. I also would like to take this moment to say that when we see Tim Curry's silhouette with his little glasses still on, I think it's a very cute look.
It is.
So, yeah, that was kind of some heavy content we had to address, but hopefully everyone understands where we're coming from with this. Certainly, we don't want to make light of sexual assault. I personally don't take part in any of the callbacks that reference this being a sexual assault that are common.
Yeah. I think that our cast in particular, the DC cast, we've cultivated a specific environment where you're not likely to hear those sorts of callbacks at our show. And if you do, they don't get any sort of good reaction from the other patrons.
Yeah.
So we we really don't encourage it, and because of that, we move on to other, I'd say, fun callbacks.
Yeah.
For instance, do you want to give some?
Oh, yeah, sure. I actually only have two for this scene. Sometimes when you first see Brad enter the room, you will get same room, no filter, cheap movie. Sometimes that happens during his actual sex scene. Sometimes it happens here, because it is indeed the same room with a different or I guess a different filter which looks non-existent on the DVD or Blu-ray. But yeah, it's the exact same room. They did not make any attempt to even move things around a little bit to make it look different. They just threw a filter on it. It's pretty funny. And then the other one is right before Janet plants her ass very hard and quickly on the bed. Sometimes people will say something to the effect of like, "Hey Janet, there's a dildo on the bed" or something, and she just like I said, just slams herself down on it.
I like timing that so that you go, "Hey Janet, there's a dildo on the bed. You should sit down." I said sit down. And and she kind of worriedly jumps onto it. I don't know.
Yeah.
The timing on that tends to get some giggles.
That's true. It does almost look like she's being moved by a exorcist like Pazuzu force when she sits on it.
So I have a couple of other callbacks, but not many. I enjoy at the beginning of the sex scene itself. Never worry, never fear. Frank the Wonderfuck is here. Bigger, little, thicker, thin. Vaseline will get it in. 2, 4, 6, 8. Frankie fucks are always great. Go Frankie. Part 1. I I always like that because it takes a lot of effort to get that out and rhythmic. And I think that there should be a cheering squad for Frankenfurter.
That's fair, and we do sometimes have a group at our shows doing that very enthusiastically, like a team of cheerleaders, and it's impressive that they have their timing down like that.
And I also like, as a response to who is it? Who's there? Something like Land Shark or Candygram. And you also get a callback payoff in this where at the beginning of the movie, even before the film starts, the MC sometimes will say rule number 6, don't touch the hair. And often you'll hear audience members kind of refer to that and refer to that. And then finally, when Brad voice in Frank's body says everything is going to be all right, you add in as long as you don't touch the hair.
Yes, referencing the hair is always funny. It has a good payoff the second time as well.
Yeah. And you can also, when you first see just the profile of Frankenfurter wearing the glasses and the curly hair, you can say a name of somebody that looks like. You could say Al Franken, which works more in DC, not because of the fact that he's a comedian, but more because he's a politician. And I don't know, that one isn't quite as fun, but there are some fun ones that you can do. But otherwise, I didn't have anything else that I really wanted to discuss. Did you have anything else?
No, I think we're good.
All right, and you know what that means? We say things at the same time, like now.
No,
You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here, so get the fuck out!
To the late night double feature picture show.